Good morning, America. This is the Cats Roundtable, and this is John Katzmatidis. And it's Sunday morning, and the government has shut down. Well, what's going to happen now? One of the most knowledgeable guys I know, the former Speaker of the House, calling in on Sunday morning, Newt Gingrich. Good morning, Mr. Speaker. How are you?
I'm doing great, John, and it's always great to talk with you and have a chance to talk about what's going on.
Well, it's nice of you to call in all the way from Paris. And what's going on in Washington? What do you hear about they broke up last night. The majority leader was upset. Everybody was upset. What do you hear?
Well, I think, first of all, that the Republicans actually feel that Senator Schumer has made a major mistake. You'll notice they're describing it as the Schumer shutdown, which works just in terms of language. And even the New York Times headline was Democrats shut down government. This is not what the Democrats hoped for. And I think that President Trump has played this pretty well. He stayed in Washington. He met privately with Schumer for one last effort. And I think the big mistake they made, and I had some real role in shutting the government down in '95, fighting over a balanced budget, and fighting over welfare reform. So I've been through this. But in 1995, we had passed appropriations for the FBI, for the Border Patrol, for the Defense Department. So we really had narrowed down what the fight was over to the Department of the Interior and a couple of other agencies. This time, the Democrats made a huge mistake because what they should have done is passed the Defense Appropriations Bill for the whole year, get it off the table, don't threaten the men and women in uniform and their families, and instead, they've stumbled into a situation where the Schumer shutdown cuts off funding for the American military on behalf of trying to get a deal for 700,000 people who entered the U.S. illegally. Now, I'm personally in favor of doing something for the Dreamers. I think that when you came here at 2 or 3 years of age, we should recognize your life is different. You didn't come here deliberately against the law. But I'm totally opposed to holding up as hostage the families and the men and women in uniform who are risking their lives to protect this country. And I think every hour that goes by, the pressure on the Democrats is going to build.
Well, why would they put 700,000 so-called Dreamers? And I agree with you. I'm in favor of giving them a break, and it wasn't their fault. Why would they put that 700,000 of them in front of 300 million Americans and disrupt their lives and create aggravation?
Well, I think in the Democratic Party, there's a sort of tribal system, and they think that they can appeal to particularly Hispanic voters almost on a tribal basis. And so they think this fight's really good for them because it consolidates the Latino vote. But that's the kind of thinking which, frankly, has driven them into the minority in the House, the Senate, and the White House, because the average American, including the average Latino, is not going to pit the Defense Department against solving the problem. Particularly, remember, it's President Trump who has said now for months that he wants to solve this problem, that he wants to sign a bill that protects the Dreamers. It was General Kelly, when he was at Homeland Security, who said over and over again that the Congress has to fix this. And I think Kelly, who I know personally pretty well, Kelly's just kind of angry that, it's just the Democrats who could have gotten this fixed over the last 5 or 6 months who are now trying to hold up the administration. And I think they're pretty determined that Kelly and Trump are both very tough guys, and they're pretty determined not to let Schumer have a victory by trying to blackmail the American military.
Who gets hurt the most? Americans are a little bit confused. They don't really know. Who gets hurt the most in government? Is it our frontliners or our soldiers? Who gets hurt?
Well, General Mattis was very, very powerful in saying, how can I go out and ask these young men and women to sign up again, to stay in the service, when the Congress is so capricious and so unreliable, and they have no idea what it's going to do to their career. And I heard a retired veteran pilot in Florida say on Fox and Friends, and he's exactly right. You need about 25 hours training a month in the air if you're going to be the kind of pilots that we want to have, where you have absolute air superiority. When you start cutting into that training time, you're just destroying the effectiveness of our military. So I think all of these guys, I mean, my dad was a career soldier for 27 years. And the degree to which they could never understand why Washington was so screwed up is once again being perpetuated here. The people who are potentially hurt the most by this are the men and women in uniform and their families, whose lives are all held hostage. And General Mattis, Secretary of Defense, was very clear that if this thing goes on for very many days, one of the first things they will cut is training for the reserves. And that's very dangerous because you start cutting training, I don't care how good your weapon is, if the soldier or sailor or Marine or airman who's using it is not really well trained, they can't get the job done.
How long, gut feeling, I know nobody really knows, gut feeling, how long do you think it will last? Do you think Schumer will come back at midnight on Sunday?
I think what may happen, one of two things is going to happen. Either Schumer is going to come back, or you're going to start seeing Democrats. Remember, you got 10 Democratic senators up for re-election in states that Trump carried. So if you're from West Virginia or North Dakota or Missouri or Indiana, the pressure on you to cave is going to get to be very real. And I wouldn't be too shocked to see a group of Democrats go to Schumer and just say, we can't keep doing this. If you want to hold out, that's fine, but we're going to vote for it. So one of two things will happen. Either Schumer will cave, and he might get a fig leaf of some kind for caving. But I think the attitude right now in the administration is that they won't give him anything because they think he has made a huge mistake. When even the New York Times and the Washington Post says that it is the Democrats closing government, and when the term the Schumer shutdown begins to catch on, you don't have any sense of people who are inclined to back off. I mean, I think the Republicans and the president think they're winning.
Do you think they'll do a temporary moving forward, or do you think we've reached the level where everybody says, no, we've got to do a permanent one or else?
No, well, I think McConnell, the Senate Republican leader, has already made clear that he is willing to offer an amendment to just have a 10-day continuation so they can keep talking. Now, I don't know what that gets them because they might end up back in the same place. But I also think that Speaker Ryan thinks that he passed a pretty compelling bill in the House, and I don't think he's very inclined to back off. So obviously they'll end up doing what the president wants because they're on the same team. But I think that you could see, this weekend, Senator McConnell offer an amendment that would keep the government open for the next 10 or 12 days while they're talking. And I would not be at all surprised to see the Democrats cave and accept it just because where they're at right now is so untenable. And I've said publicly, if having done this before, if I were the Democrats, I would offer a full year funding for the Defense Department and get it off the table. As long as it's at risk, they will never win this fight.
Mr. Speaker, thank you for calling in from Paris, and thank you for your knowledge. And
John, this does make the Cats Roundtable a truly international show.
Thank you so much, and have a great time in Paris, and we'll talk to you soon. This is the Cats Roundtable. We'll be right back.